Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, December the 20th, and it is 5 more sleeps till Christmas. Today is a reasonably sunny day, but there's a lot of wind going on, so I don't think you'll be able to hear it, but if you hear some sudden big gusts, that's probably just the wind going on. And with a new date, we're in a new location. Why? Because I wanted a Christmas tree in my video. So this was, you got to see the village, the bad village, the not so bad village, and now you get to see Christmas tree for both this week and next week. So new location, new lighting, we'll see how everything goes. I will say that this week we're going to do things in a really different order because I need a few things to tie in together, blah, blah, blah. And as you probably saw when you clicked on the video, it says, let's talk about Kreinik, everybody's favorite. As usual, we're going to do that at the end. We'll do a few things before we get there. So I'm going to start with a previous finish, because sometimes I like to prove that I can not just finish the stitching, but fully finished, to prove that sometimes I really do pull that off. I will say with my new location, I'm using the ring light again, so I am a little bit concerned that when I hold these things up, we're going to have that weird thing going on where it tries to adjust to the lighting. So this is the Heirloom Christmas Sampler from the Victoria Sampler. I'm going to hold that up close because there are two different colorways to do that. This is the Victorian pink and green version that is shown on the cover, but that's not how I did mine. I did mine in the Victorian red and green because those are more my colors, which I think anyway, whatever. So here is my finish of that big gigantic thing. So yes, I'm going to have to do several things with this. I will say in this top band, that tree is a beast. That's all there is to say about it. I have a friend where I like, this is kind of, if you want to make her annoyed, mention this particular project because the tree was pretty much her downfall. But this is actually a piece that a local needlework shop at the time, they actually ran a class for this particular piece. So we met one Thursday a month for 12 months. And I signed up for the class not because I thought that I needed the help necessarily in doing the stitches, although at certain points certainly did take that help that was available. But I thought that it would do a really good job of keeping me on task of getting this fully stitched and in a position where I could have it stitched and framed in time for Christmas of that year, which I successfully accomplished, so that worked out really well for me. One of the funny stories about this particular piece is the very first week that the class was meeting, so it was meeting on a Thursday night, I was coming after work, which meant, as usual, I was the very last person to arrive, and after it had slightly started. And so I arrived at this class and sat down in the only remaining chair left, and everybody else had hauled out their stuff and they were working on things. So I then started to haul out my stuff, my chart, my threads, my fabric, and I hauled it out and put it on the table, and everybody at the table went, "What is that?" So it's really hard to tell in this lighting, but the fabric that I used was a 32 or 28 count water lily jobelin, which is not the called for fabric at all for either of the colorways. But I thought that the green would make a really nice backdrop to all of this. And it was so funny sitting at that table of stitchers where apparently it had never occurred to anybody sitting at my table that you could stitch the chart using a fabric that was not the called for fabric. So thank heavens that that's where we started. So we didn't even get into the number of times that I changed the colors of the fibers that I'm using on any given chart. But this is my Heirloom Christmas sampler, which I think is lovely, framed with a dark green matte and an inner fillet. Love it, love it, love it, love it. My framer, family friend, did this for me, and just love it. Love it, love it, love it. And all the way down to the bottom where, at the very bottom of this, there is hardanger down there. So yes. Now, something that came up in that particular group is if this looks too big and you're like, well, I don't want to do all of that. On the chart, there is a different way. Says and you can do this for any pattern, right? It's a band sampler. If you don't like certain bands, don't do those bands. It doesn't say that you have to do every single band that is provided. So if you don't like a hardanger, you don't know how to do hardanger, you don't want to do hardanger, or you don't want to learn it, whatever, and you've chosen not to pick up this chart because it's got hardanger in it, well, cut it off before you get to the hardanger. It will be just as lovely. So if you only came down to here, right? I think that looks lovely. That's perfectly lovely. You don't have to go. You could go all the way down to there. You could cut out middle bands, whatever. You don't, just because there are X number of bands doesn't mean you have to stitch X number of bands in your piece. Your piece, your project, do what makes you happy. So this is my piece and I love it. And again, this is one of those ones where this is hanging up in a place that is seen by me every day. So seen by me, it's not necessarily in a spot where anybody coming to my house would see it, but it is seen by me every day and I love it. And I love looking at it every time I see it, regardless of whether it is December, June, September, March. It just makes me happy, so why not keep it up? So that is my previous finish. And because we're in a different location, I have to juggle 12 things to make this work, so it's going to get interesting to see how well I pull this off. Okay. With that, let's talk about something I've added to my stash. So this is 32 count Zweigart Charcoal Lugana. And I'm highlighting this because this is one of my favorite fabrics. And it might seem like an odd choice for a favorite fabric, but for all of those charts that call for stitching on chalkboard or black fabrics, we all know the ones we're talking about. So one, because I enjoy stitching on an even weave, so for example, Slate by Fabrics by Stephanie, which is called for a lot on those types of charts. When you put it onto an even weave, so a Lugana, it looks very, very different. It does not, from my perspective, it takes on quite a purple undertone. So to me, it looks quite purple. It doesn't necessarily look chalkboardy. So that's where I struggle with it on an even weave. It looks fantastic if you've got Slate Linen by Fabrics by Stephanie. That absolutely looks fantastic. That is it is great for those types of fabrics. It doesn't work so well on an even weave. I also find stitching on black a little bit of a challenge. Again, if I have to do it and I settle in and I get comfortable, I can do it. But it isn't necessarily a fabric that I enjoy stitching on. But I do enjoy stitching on this. Why? Because it's just that much lighter. It's, from my perspective, it's easier to see where you're going on this than it is on a black, using all of the tips and tricks that everybody talks about. But 32 count charcoal is my go-to. The interesting thing about 32 count Charcoal Lugana is that it was actually discontinued for a while. And so the owner of one of my LNSs, when she discovered that it was being discontinued, reached out to me, for which I am forever grateful, because she said, this is being discontinued. I can probably get one more order in before it's discontinued. What do you want done? And so I bulked up. Now, it has since come back, so I'm not showing you something that's discontinued. This, you can get this now. It is available, so it is back being manufactured. I'm pointing that out because what I did do is I have pulled a piece of the original, so I'm calling it the original Charcoal Lugana, also in 32 count. So this is the original, this piece here. That is the original, and this piece here is the new. So it's not terribly different. They're not identical. And there goes something's weird going on in the lighting, but I can't do anything about that. So this is the new, this is the old, and I would say that this, it's a little more heathered, the new. So again, I still think it's fantastic, which is why I've added to my stash. Why did I add to my stash? Because the 32 count Charcoal Lugana that I got before it was discontinued has already been allotted to other projects. So this is a piece that belongs in a project bag with something else, because it's already been cut to size and serged, ready to go for that particular project whenever, you know, that happens to come up in my stitching plans. So that has arrived in my stash. I was also the recipient of some gifts this week. So I am a December birthday. So I have a very good friend of mine has given me a gift certificate to my LNS, which is great, because you know I know it sounds really ridiculous when you say it's going to help me with my Stitch from Stash, because when you shop for something using a gift certificate, it doesn't count towards your budget because you're using, you know, somebody else's money. And again, so the gift certificate was given to me as a gift because I'm pretty sure as we go through next year, between Nashville and other releases that are coming up, there's going to be something that I'm going to want to add to my stash, and trying to stick with my Stitch from Stash rules, both the rules as set in the group as well as the rules that I've set for myself. It will be very helpful that my friend's gift certificate will turn into lovely things for me to add to my stash. So I'm just, you know, it's a gift. The gift certificate is the gift. It's just the exact thing it's going to turn into isn't going to show up until sometime in 2021. I am also the recipient of, wait for it, I got an Evertote bag as a gift. So this is from the Christmas line that she did this year. So this is the medium bag and with the Notions pouch. This is with the 12 Days of Christmas fabric from that particular one. And here's where I'm going to pause because this is going to be my screen capture. So this is a really lovely gift. Lovely, lovely, lovely. I was very excited. I love all the Christmas decorations and musical. Anyway, so 12 Days of Christmas. So there's my pouch, Notions pouch. There's my bag. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And I have to say, I'm one of those people, I like a top zip. So those ones where the zipper comes across here, it's not that I dislike them, but a top zip is my preferred zipper location, because that way you can just open it and dump things in and make sure it's closing properly. And that's just my personal preference. Nothing against the other versions, but yes. Look, I got a gift. It's an Evertote set. To put it to good use now. So now we're going to talk about free charts. So this is not the first time you will have seen this particular one, but this is the Pine Needles Advent Stitch Along that they're currently running. And I'm highlighting this because we are now up to day 20. And so by the time I'm recording this, I've already pulled down day 20. I'm gonna zoom that in a little closer so you can see the 20 days there that are going on. So there's only 5 more days left to get in this set. And just a reminder that this is a free download only, as far as I know, through the end of December of 2020. Once the calendar rolls over, this is going to turn into a chart that you will need to buy. So very much like Pandemic, get it while it's free. While it's free, get it then. And the other charts that I have to show you tie in with my theme. And we're going to come back to that one, but I did want to highlight that particular one before we get to free charts part 2. So what did I stitch on this week? Well, it will come as no big surprise to any of you who've watched before. I'm working on my Marbeck Nativity. I'm currently working on the camel. Oh yeah, one of the things that I did add to my stash this week is I bought myself another set of scroll rods because the size that I need to make the camel work on scroll rods, I actually didn't have in my stash. I either had ones that were gigantic or I had ones that were not quite big enough. So I had to add those. But as you'll see, not well enough to actually get the thing onto the scroll rods. So here's where I'm at on the camel. So I finished all of the stitching over here. And then, in case you can't tell, I stitched this navy blue along here, 2 rows of navy blue DMC, so I could get to over here and work on the back part of the camel. There's 3 more colors and then I will have all of this complete. But I had to stop and put this in because it will be hard to tell as usual, but that is a Kreinik blending filament. Now, the interesting thing about this is that everything between this line here and this navy part, everything in between these two and a little bit above it, all of that is being filled in using Kreinik products. And I say Kreinik products because it's not blending filament. Now I will say in my I'm okay with it, really can't stand it relationship. I didn't want to call it a love-hate relationship because those are far too extreme on each of those ends. Relationship with Kreinik, certainly as it relates to the Marbeck Nativity. The interesting thing is when I sat down to stitch this 2 strands of blending filament in there, started it, had no problems, no issues, you know, sort of, you know, lopped this thing off and went, all right, there's that. So I can't explain why sometimes it's fantastic, but fantastic's a little, sometimes it's just fine, it's totally fine. So this was like no different stitching this with Kreinik blending filament than stitching this with DMC. Why it's fine sometimes and it's not okay other times, I have no explanation other than saying it's a reality in my life. Sometimes it's fine, sometimes, you know, I'd like to throw it out the window. But I'm not going to do that. But it's, yes, so the interesting part is here, everything in between here, this big gap here, everything that's going to go in there is a Kreinik product, but it is not blending filament at all. So with that, let's talk about Kreinik. So this is why this week is the week where we're going to talk about Kreinik, because I had to get far enough along in the camel to start talking about these types of things. I just realized I forgot something on my gift. Okay, Evertote bag, plus Notions pouch, plus a needle minder that has my initial on it. Forgot that one. Okay, so let's talk about Kreinik products. So I've got some notes here because I did go visit the Kreinik website, and I have to say there are a lot more products there than I thought I knew about. And there are also a lot of uses for these products that I never thought of really. So for example, Kreinik products apparently are used quite a lot in the making of fishing lures. So there's all sorts of stuff on the webpage about fishing lures and some of the products that are good for using in the making of fishing lures. I'm not a fisherman by any stretch of the imagination, so I've got nothing on that, can't help you. But if you're interested in things that you can do with Kreinik products in your fishing lures, just stop by their webpage. I will put a link to the Kreinik page in the show notes below as usual. So Kreinik does a lot of metallic threads, which we've all heard about, and I'm just going to do a quick rundown of the types of metallic threads that they have in their product lineup. So they have the blending filament, which we've all heard me go on and on and on about. They also have cable, they have cord, they have multiple sizes of braids. So the sizes that the braids come in are 4, 8, 12, 16, 24, and 32. My understanding is that has to do essentially, if you take the blending filament and you take that, if you take 4 of those strands of blending filament and you braid them together, that's effectively gets you to a number 4 braid. There was an interesting thing when I was looking on the website where it says if you're needing to strand up more than 2 strands of blending filament, on their webpage it says stop using blending filament. If you need to use more strands than 2, you should size up and start using a number 4 braid, which I do that frequently. Even in things where it says like take 1 strand of DMC and combine it, for example, with a number 32 blending filament, I usually just skip that entire step and I just go straight to a 32 braid in number 4 and say forget the whole blending of things, just take a 32 number 4 braid and go with that. Now, is that a little more sparkle than what you would get if you were doing 1 strand of DMC with 1 strand of blending filament? Yes. But for me, having an easier time stitching with it is of more benefit to me than sort of saying maybe it's too much sparkle. I don't know. I think sparkle's okay in certain things. So they also do metallic ribbons. So they produce a 1/16 of an inch, an 1/8 of an inch, and a 1/4 of an inch ribbons, as well as Japan threads, wired braids, micro ice chenille, 3/8 trim, which I don't really know what that is, wired 3/8 trim. So there are products there that I don't know. The other thing that people don't necessarily know about Kreinik is that they also do silk products as well. And so they've got Silk Bella, which is a 3-ply twisted silk. They've got Silk Mori, which is a 6-stranded silk. They've also got Silk Mori in milk paint, and the milk paint only really refers to the types of colors that are in that particular line. The milk paint is really where you're trying to get to a more heritage type of colorway. So they've got a line of milk paints. They also have Silk Surica, which is a 3-ply filament, and they apparently also have couching threads. Now, I personally don't have all of those items, but sadly I do have quite a few of them. So this is where it's going to get interesting because I have to haul my stuff out from its magic little bag. Okay. And this is with a new location. This was harder because I don't really have any spot to put it down on well. So let's talk about the silks a little bit right off the get-go. So this is a Kreinik silk. This is their silk mori. So it comes in a skein that looks very similar to what you would find like a soie d'Alger. And so I have some of this in my stash. I will say, because it's in my stash, I'm saying it's because it's called for in a pattern that I've got. Now, clearly it's not living with the pattern, but it's not likely to be used randomly. Ooh, a little glary there. But so that's the silk mori. This is, now I'm not going to start unwinding these things, but so this is the silk Bella, of which I have a couple of colors in it. So they come on spools, similar to how Soie 103s from Auvers Soie come. And I also have this is their silk Sarika. So the difference between the Bella and the Sarika is, I would say that this is a thicker one. I don't know if this can actually, you know, like with the silk mori, if it can be stranded. Go to their site, read up on it if you want to know more. I am by no means an expert in Kreinik products, which I'm sure is becoming evident. I'm going to talk about, we're going to move into some of the other ones. So this is the silk, it's not silk. This is the micro ice chenille. Oh yeah. So this is, it's kind of like fuzzy stuff from Rainbow Gallery. Oh, the reflection on that is just terrible, but it's got metallic in it. So it is sparkly. And so this is a type of fiber that you would use, it actually shows up better when I don't hold up the white, where you would lie it on top of your fabric, and then you would just couch it down. So just sort of stitch it down over top. So you wouldn't be pulling this through the holes in your fabric. I suppose if you were doing canvas work, maybe if it was a big enough count, you might be using it on that. But as far as I know, generally, if you're using this, you're using it to couch it down. And then, so I'm just getting my products all lined up here. So this is the ribbon. I think this is 1/16. So the other thing is that each of the Kreinik products that are on spools come with a different color tag, which theoretically tells you what's on there. So these are the two different kinds of sizes of ribbon, and let's see if I can actually get this one off. Okay. Just not sure I got those wrong. So this is the red one, which I probably should have known. So the red one is the 1/16, and this is the 1/8. So those are the two ribbons that I have. I also have, so this is a spool of their Japan Gold. So this is, this is cable. So I use this in that center panel of the Marbeck Nativity. So this is more wiry, and I used it when I was back stitching around the outline of the chest, because it gives it a different, look. So it's thicker. And then you have things like, so this is a Kreinik number 4 braid. So again, 2 strands of blending filament. If you need more than 2 strands to get the coverage you're looking for, even on Kreinik's website, they say you should just size up and you should move into a number 4 braid. And then, so this is a number 8. And again, so as you move up from number 4, 8, 12, 16, the braid just gets thicker and thicker. So that's what's happening from the braid perspective. The interesting thing on their website, they also talked about how their threads can be used in fashion, surface embroidery. They've got stuff on there for knitting. Now, I'm not a knitter. I didn't even go into the page about the knitting to see how you can use these products in knitting, because I'm sure even if I got in there, I'm not sure it would necessarily make any sense to me. So knitting, crocheting, fashion, embroidery, surface embroidery, fishing lures. I feel like I'm missing several things. Yeah, if you're doing machine sewing, so all sorts of things. There's a ton of information on there. So if you're looking for information about Kreinik, and if you're looking for how you can use it in a variety of different crafts, go to the Kreinik.com webpage, which I'll link in the show notes below. There's a ton of information on there. Which leads us to part 2 of our free patterns, because you'll never guess. It's about Kreinik free patterns. So when you go onto the Kreinik webpage, there is a spot in the bar at the top that says freebies. So I am going to put a link directly to, if you click on that freebies button, where it takes you to. So I will also provide that link. Because from there you can choose whether you want to do cross-stitching, hardhanger, knitting. Like there's a bunch of different sections in there around the types of freebie patterns that they are providing. I, of course, only, I've really gone into the cross-stitching one. And so for cross-stitching alone, there are over 140 patterns available on the Kreinik website. So here is a random sprinkling of available charts there. So these are terrible pictures. So not surprisingly, Christmas themed ones. So this is like a faux part Santa. So this is a terrible picture. So this is, you can hardly see it. It's cardinals in a wreath. This is a golden, it's called golden something. And so you get all 4 of these charts together. I like this one. Merry Christmas and Happy Stitching. That sounds like a great sentiment. But there's not just Christmas ones. I'm only showing Christmas first because, you know, it's Christmas right now, or the lead up to Christmas. So they have things for every season. So they have ones that can be out anytime, like this welcome one. They have Easter ones. There's bunnies and eggs and things. I think this is called Frosted Grapes. This is Pink Buds or something. Pink in Bloom or something. Pink something. Halloween ones. And then, so this is called Sapphire Squares. Again, I think this picture does not do it justice at all, but it's the one that was available on the website because, of course, I haven't stitched any of these. I've only been smart enough to download them all. So that's an example of the types of patterns there. Like I say, there are a ton, okay. There's over 140 cross-stitch patterns available on the Kreinik webpage. And again, there's not just cross-stitch patterns, there's other craft-related things there, which I have not clicked into to see what they are. The other thing that I want you to know about these free charts from Kreinik is that they are not 100% usage of Kreinik. So if you're going like, oh my goodness, all I've done is watched you and I've heard you whine and complain about Kreinik, which, don't get me wrong, I've whined and complained about Kreinik. So it's a little ironic that I'm saying there are all these free charts. It's not when you go in there that every fiber used in these patterns is a Kreinik product. So there are ones where you go in there and there are a couple of their Kreinik things, whether it's a blending filament or a braid, and then a lot of DMC, which all of us have in our stash. I'm sure Kreinik wouldn't necessarily be thrilled when I say this. If you can't stand working with the Kreinik, stitch the pattern and just stitch the color of the Kreinik. So if you don't like stitching with a metallic gold blending filament, pick a golden color thread and use that instead. But the charts are available. They're also small enough, again, so it can give you, if you wanted to try things like, so there are certain charts in there in that cross-stitching section where the fibers that they're using are not the metallics at all, but they are using fibers from their silk lines. So if you wanted to try a different kind of silk, you could use one of those charts and you could kit that up at your LNS using those Kreinik products. And again, the ones that I looked at, it's not like you needed, 47 different kinds of these things. You needed like a few of them, a handful of them, to stitch your particular chart, because it just gives you an opportunity to try something new. Free chart, kit that up. All you would really need, I'm sure all of us have a little piece of some kind of fabric left over from some project sitting in our stash that would work for a lot of these products or projects. So you can do that. So again, there's Kreinik. A very, very brief thing on the Kreinik, because it's a very large product line. I have to admit, when I got on there, I thought I knew a decent amount about their line, but I got on there like, okay, I didn't really know that the braids went all the way up to 32. Again, because it's not something that's used in the types of stitching that I do. And again, the using them for making fishing lures didn't even occur to me. Again, so this is something that, in cross-stitching that we're all aware of Kreinik. But by the way, I'm sure if, from the looks on the website, if you got into the people who are making the lures and you were talking about Kreinik, I think apparently, from what I can tell on the website, Kreinik is a really big product that is used in making of fishing lures. Again, learn something new. And so with that, actually I'm going to go back to my little camel here. So there are Kreinik products coming into my sphere. So more than the blending filament here. So all of this is using, these types of products, which I have to admit I have not actually used before. It's gonna get interesting. So stay tuned as we continue. Yeah, so failing miserably, won't have the camel finished by, I can't imagine that I would have the camel finished even by the end of the year. Good luck with that. So I will be carrying my infamous camel over into 2021. Anyway, as well as the center panel, which I also didn't get that finished either. But so Marbeck is continuing into 2021. I'm not accomplishing my goal, which all of you knew. It is what it is. And with that, I'm going to wish you all a Merry Christmas. Even if you don't celebrate Merry Christmas, I hope you take the sentiment as a wishing you well and a time of celebration as we come to the end of what has been a very memorable year. For some, for positive reasons, for others, for very negative reasons. We've all had a unique set of circumstances to deal with as we've journeyed through this year, and is certainly one for the record books, and certainly one that I'm sure all of us will remember for the rest of our lives. No one will be able to say 2020 without thinking of this. For people where I live, it's like saying the year of the flood, because that was a memorable year. For people who lived in Fort McMurray, it's like when they had their big fire. The year of the fire, they all know what year that was. 2020 is a global event where everyone will remember what happened in 2020 and how unique this year has been. But I am wishing you peace and joy. I'm hoping that you do get to spend some time with some family. I know with different areas going into different restrictions, it's going to be a Christmas like no other. So certainly for me and my family, my mother is in a category where if she got COVID, her doctors have been very clear that said if you get COVID, you're going to die. So with the new lockdowns that are occurring where I live, and my parents live here as well, so our Christmas has completely changed. The family Christmas dinner is not occurring, so we're all going to be doing Christmas a little bit differently. I'm very grateful for technology. Certainly between Christmas and New Year's, I have planned a series of FaceTime calls and a series of Zoom things that I'm going to be participating in. So while we cannot meet together physically, we can meet through technology, and I'm very grateful for that, because that certainly has enabled a lot of people to participate in things that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to participate in this year. So with that, I hope you have a great Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, please take the day of the 25th and just rest, relax, find something to celebrate, spend it with people you love, and I hope you've had a good week. I will be doing a video next week again. So next Sunday I will be back again with another video in the same location with the same backdrop, because, you know, while you've got the Christmas tree up, you've got to make the most of that. So I hope you all have a great week. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you take some time to stitch and that you find some enjoyment in your stitching, and I'll see you again next week. Have a good week, guys.